And so in our perfect world in which we've implemented, in which we've been present from the birth of the agile transformation, as it were, where we were able to weigh in and talk with the client about these are the roles that you would need, these are where you would apply that. Let's talk about what your current workflow is. Let's meet you where you are and figure out who you've got and what the players look like and what the landscape looks like, and then think through an actual change plan that we could bring to bear that people would understand. I haven't ever been in a perfect world.
Oh, you should get to one. They're so awesome.
Get brought in.
They're amazing.
I come in after they've already set forth on their path and they've already plugged people into what they think are the appropriate roles, and then you look and it's like, well, we didn't know what to do with these project managers or these BAs or these technical managers, and so we've all assigned them key reporting roles within a hierarchy of a project reporting structure, and we've called the point where they come together, to use the vernacular, a scrum of scrums.
It's not their fault. They're smart people. They're professionally qualified. Yeah. It's a system design problem, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And you have to take into account the complexity, and and so I don't want to sell short the role that, for example, a project manager is accustomed to holding in the organization. They have at least some of the skills that we would look at in a Scrum Master and say, there is a project management piece to what they do. It's not the dictatorial piece of it.
Can't be.
Right. It's more the communication and the problem addressing side of it, the risk management side of it, right? Not so much the telling people what to do side of it. There are also aspects of common project management that we find a product owner would find value in, right? There's the planning aspect to it. There's a projection aspect to it. There are things in the tool set of your average project manager, your PMI project manager, that can fall into either one of those camps. And the same thing is true of BAs, and the same thing is true of many of these other roles that we don't have a clean thing for them to do. To quite uncharacteristically give credit to SAFE, they at least came up with a place to say that those people had a place on our organization. Here's my SAFE chart, and this is where those people go, right? They gave them a place on the chart. There, you're represented. Don't feel bad. You should do this. It may or may not. Now, and that's as far as I'm going to go in complimenting SAFE, because what they've done is they've said, oh, your organizational structure, that's cool. Just keep it. Don't redefine it. Don't change it.
People hate SAFE. It's so great.
Many people in our orbit dislike certain aspects of SAFE, and there are and in the next breath we'll say, but there are bits and pieces of it that are actually kind of cool, and then in the very next breath, but you didn't need to do SAFE to get those. So there's
SAFE exists to solve a problem. I guess the question is, which problem is it? Whose problem is it?
Well, I think the problem that it's designed to solve is cut and paste, or just add water so that someone that wants to say our organization is agile now, you can just install this thing called SAFE, and a lot of times that comes maybe from a CIO or somewhere up there, not uncommon, and so it's to help an organization feel more comfortable with, hey, this is something we can install, and there will be an end to it, and oh my God, there's a place for everybody. to your point earlier, Mike.
It's all inclusive.
Right. And so we don't have to truly restructure our organization for agility. We can just follow this model
Cargo code.
and we'll be agile. Just
So
like that.
do you suppose, Jeff, in that case, in the mind of a CTO, one of the problems they're trying to solve is to get certainty? You see sometimes they're installing safe so that they can be more sure what's going to happen as a way to plan and execute with certainty. Because that would be my main concern, is like ultimately it comes down to, where are you, right? Are you in a place where you know what's going to happen and can know what's going to happen? Or are you in a place where you cannot know and need to shift your approach? Because that's the risk, right? If you're in an uncertain environment as a CTO and you buy safe, install safe, thinking it's going to let you know what's going to happen in 6 months with certainty, that's rough, man. The whole point is you're in a place where you can't know that.
I think it's whether it's about certainty, and to be honest with you, I think everybody wants a degree of certainty because, uncertainty makes everybody feel uncomfortable. And until you learn as an individual or as an organization to become comfortable with uncertainty, you're never gonna, you're always gonna be searching for that solution instead of building it yourself. And, I think if you want to achieve true agility, it takes time, especially if you're a large organization that's been doing things a certain way. It takes time to morph and transform into something different. And, given the short-term view that organizations typically have, whether it's quarterly, maybe sometimes annual, but their appetite for something that's long-term, where there's certainty all around the corner, there is always anyway. But if you want to believe, if we do this, we can be certain that X is going to happen. When we have that view, then they're always going to, gravitate towards solutions that, any snake oil salesman is put out there. And that's not to imply, maybe that wasn't the right word, snake oil. That anybody...
I'm sure there's a positive way to
Let's not
snake
impugn
oil.
the motives of all of the genuine snake oil salesmen.
Hey, you know what? There's probably some valid uses for snake oil.
If you've got squeaky snakes,
What are you going to do?
what else are you
Tolerate
supposed to use?
unlubricated snakes? That's clearly not a solution. Okay, so
Ooh,
moving
all right,
on quickly. Yes, even after you decide or accept or recognize whatever that you can't have certainty, you still have to build the system and the mindset and the approach to deal with. You're not done. You're just beginning. This is the point that I hear you saying, Jeff.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So even if you went out and bought, I don't care whether it's safe or whatever other scaling model, if you think that just installing it and training everybody on it is going to make you, all right, we're agile, you're imagining.
Well, maybe they're not going for agile. Maybe they're going for safe. We're safe. There's certainty in safety. It's in the name, man. If we didn't do it, we couldn't say it if it wasn't true.
So then to Matt's point, then what's the ultimate objective? What is it in your mind, if you're a CIO or CTO or whatever, what is it that induces you to write the check?
And by the way, these checks are like Mick Kirsten, the guy who wrote Projects to Products. He talks about several banks in Europe that dropped $1 billion, $1,000 million over the course of 2 years to go to large, and it just failed. It just absolutely failed. And I think the reason he said, I don't think this is a mischaracterization, is because they didn't recognize where they were. Right? They're trying to drive a screw with a hammer. So it's not an academic question.
But having that introspection, I think, is lacking a lot of times. I mean, true introspection.
Yeah.
And where does that like in your let's take this back to something practical. How did you see the bringing of those higher orders of the organization together? Like, you know, when you're in a smaller organization, gaining access to different layers of leadership is easier because they're closer at hand, and you can usually get to them to talk to them. So, you know, you've got a potential to bring your experience to bear or help them through, you know, coach them through part of this transformation or something along those lines. How does that manifest at that higher level in these safe, like when you say you install it, you're installing safe at a team level? You've got you've built a structure for release trains. You've got the release trains potentially dealing with a larger program or a larger portfolio, but what is the coordination at the higher level? How is that being manifested? How are they coached? How are they brought along? Like, what roles address that?
That's a good question.
I think it's the question. I would say the places I've been, it has been, I don't want to say the problem, but maybe the biggest gap and maybe the root cause of the problems we've had. Because, like, going forward, I think it's much easier, it's much more rewarding, it's much more effective to coach smaller organizations, a couple hundred people, right, where you do have access to the CTO. And because you're right, the places that I've been that were billion-dollar, multi-billion-dollar, multinational, you know, old companies, big old, like
International companies.
Internet. The issue is, and when you think of when the model is we're going to install it, the truth is everybody has to change how they think about stuff, right? That's why we're there. And the C-suite has at least some stuff to consider and to understand as it changes, right? Everybody has to understand project to product. If we're really trying to set up product management, everybody has to understand, because there will be different behavior required of the C-suite. We're going to want them to encourage different behavior of all the people who report to them. And in a situation where half the org is trying to do one thing, half the org is trying to build a product, and half the org is trying to manage it as a project, like, you're not aligned. And so you're right. I think you need to get to the mental models of the leaders. But if they haven't decided that that's part of what the check is for, it's a hard problem.
That's one of the limitations you'll run into. And, you know, I've been on engagements where I've been more or less boxed. As in, you stay in this space. We got people for that. We got people to go handle the above thing.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, cool. Can we occasionally meet so you can catch us up on what the above thing is doing so that we can see if that might be impacting what we're doing? Can we coordinate on that level? And the answer usually is no.
Right.
And a lot of times they're handing you a list of things to do, right, as opposed to valuable problems to solve.
Yeah.
So, and that's kind of the start of it. Like, yeah.
So isn't that just operating in the way that they've always operated? So there is no change there, and that, you know, leads to those continuation of disconnects. And, you know, I've argued for a long time that that's part of the problem, is that there's a disconnect from that truly upper management down to where work actually begins to happen and products get developed, is that there is a disconnect. And so back to the whole safe thing, what my observation of what I've seen in organizations that have adopted or tried to adopt safe is that, yes, it's limited to that portfolio level and down, but then above that, it gives management above that the ability to continue doing things the same way they've always done them. And so therein, there really is no transformation. I mean, let's face it. If you're really transforming, you ever seen a half caterpillar, half butterfly?
I have. They were dead.
They don't live long.
They don't survive.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The analogy holds.
So then there's no transformation.
100%. The more I do this, the more I think it has to come from the CEO, or has to be supported by the CEO. We have to be, otherwise we're not rowing in the same direction.
But also, that CEO, whatever level, any of the C level, there has to be a clear understanding that they have a role, and it's not just a financial, here I give you money and you help me transform. It's, what do I do differently? What has to change behaviorally for me to make this work? And that's the kind of introspection I don't often see. Certainly not in a large organization. To your point, Matt, in a smaller organization, you're maybe more likely to see that. Not a guarantee, but as coaches, we can at least impress upon them the need for their own behavioral change to contribute to a true transformation. So,
Yeah. I think if you think, go ahead.
Well, and it can't be transformation just for transformation's sake.
right. Why are you
the problem is,
transforming?
why are we doing it? And we had the APLN meeting the other night, and we were talking about the question that came up was, should coaches be change managers, or should they be versed in change management? And we had an answer. What would you say, Matt?
I would say, so if you're a coach and you're trying to help a company transform, you have to understand it's not a finger snapping thing. There's a process. So I think if you aren't informed, and I'm struggling to understand how you could be a coach trying to deliver transformation without being steeped in change management. You need a theory of what's happening, because then you can provide predictions based on the data. You need a way to understand the thing and say, here's what I see, here's my explanation for it, and here's what I would predict if you do certain specific things. So no. Long answer, no. No, you can't be a coach in transformation without change management.
There you go.
Yeah.
A successful coach. You can be a coach.
Yeah.
But,
Yes, you can.
And I would build on that and say to be versed in more than one change model, because different change models fit different layers in different ways. If you look at a pro-sci model with ADKAR, it's there's awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement, and then there's the Cotter model, which has 2 more steps, or even more if you're in different versions of it. But those always seem to start with, there's a burning platform, and you need to do something based on the fact that there's a burning need, and then there's just all these change things that you would go through. And if you don't know what those are at the CEO level, what is the CEO trying to change? Why do they want to change? It can't be, well, we want to check the Agile box. That's not going to have a very
100%. This is
Right?
squarely in the role of the CEO, because what is the CEO supposed to do? My understanding is that they're supposed to understand the marketplace. Like, they're focused a lot on outside the organization. Where are we? Are we in an area where what we need to do is knowable going forward? Are we executing a plan, or are we in waters where we have to be more flexible and and learn?
And do we have competition? And is our competition in some way outreaching us or outperforming us, and we need to close that gap? And what did they do? Why are they doing it? And some of us in the Agile space would argue maybe they're using agility, and they're being more responsive to their customer needs than you can be with your more monolithic, aged approaches. And so what drives the CEO might be something like that, where you say, look, your competition's cleaning your clock. You've got to do something to respond. Now, the problem is you can't go down to the trench level at the team and inspire them with our competition is cleaning our clock. That's not where their focus is.
No, you can't tell
Right.
them how to do it. They have to already have a system in place whereby they
Right.
can respond quicker. So maybe the thing to say to the CEO is, you're losing relative to your competitors because they can adjust faster. They can turn quicker. They can take advantage of stuff quicker. And this
Right.
is true of companies. It's true of animals, right? Whoever can, it's true of air battles, right? In the Navy, whoever can turn quicker and get inside the opponent's decision loop, right?
Yeah.
They're gonna survive.
But the point I was trying to get to is that the motivations at different levels and the change that has to happen is different at different levels in the organization, and they're all important.
Absolutely.
Right. So what drives the C-suite? You have to be aware that their needs are different. But when you get down in the trenches, I mean, we used to engage teams by going to them and telling them how their life will be different if we go down an agile path. Remember how when you got started doing this, you said, I'm a smart person and I got hired because I'm obviously a smart person. And then they stuck me in an environment in which I'm told what to do instead of giving me the freedom and the creativity to demonstrate that I'm a smart person who knows what I'm doing. So we're going to say, we're going to put you in a team where you're self-directed. You guys come up with your own solutions to complex problems. We're just going to point you in the direction to go. Would you like that? We would sell it by saying, we're going to get those pesky project managers off your back. You're not going to be under the thumb of a micromanaging
Yeah.
person somewhere. And that wasn't the project manager, by the way.
No.
But
Right.
we had to sell what was in it for them. We had to build their desire for the change in the midst of all that. And it's different for different people, and it's different in the middle. And we always focused on the bottom, and we focused on the top, and we never focused on the middle. And that's where most of our resistance came from. And there's still a deficit in what do you do with the middle managers? And not just that role itself, but that whole layer, the whole in between. Agile by nature was a flat structure.
Well, they didn't think about it that much, so that's probably not fair. I mean, they certainly didn't document it in the manifesto, right?
Right.
What do managers do? And it's not
nothing. They did. It's not there. It's documented by omission.
Yeah, which has got to be. How could you view that as anything but scary from a point
Yeah.
of view of a middle manager?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, we've said it before. There is definitely value that can come from the people who have risen in those leadership roles within the organization. It's just not necessarily the same thing they've been doing. Just like the developers aren't just checking boxes and following orders now.
Yep.
There's a similar level of additional activity that the middle layer can now do. Right?
If you're moving from a certain place where you're doing project management to an uncertain place where you're doing product management, that is a totally different job at the middle, right? Mm-hmm. You have to, the thing we've always said is you have to shift from being responsible for delivering code or solutions to be responsible for the delivery of an effective cross-functional team that understands the problem and has all the skills and whatever they need to execute based on the intent, the commander's intent.
But do you think that the origins of Agile, the seeds of Agile, as they are represented in the manifesto and all the thought that went into it that led up to the crafting of the manifesto, was really by software folks looking for solutions? Because let's face it, it says we are searching for better ways to develop software. And so that was purely from a software development perspective, all that goes into that. Sure. When Agile began to grow out of that and expand into other areas, naturally, managers weren't identified originally because that wasn't the intent.
Yeah.
That was not the original intent. And so now that we're trying to expand it, and I'm not saying that expansion is bad, it's actually a good thing, But as we move from what traditionally was considered agile to agility, true business agility, it's naturally going to not just scale, but it's going to spread throughout an organization. And so by nature, it's going to affect the people in that middle management. And to Mike's point earlier, this is something that we always see is I call it the gooey middle, is left out. And it's a problem because it's not that they can't add value. It's just that the value that they can and should add is different from what they've historically done. And, historically, middle management has just been being part of the bureaucracy, to put it bluntly.
Yeah. And the thing is, you usually didn't hire people in the middle management. They usually moved up into middle management, right? They ascended from the trenches. They ascended from the people who were used to doing things where they could measure their value to the organization by the output that they produced, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then they move into a management layer. So now how do they demonstrate their value? Either they stay involved in the trenches and they help influence to make sure that the people who are in the trenches are producing good output.
They get stuff done.
Right. They get her done.
Drive.
That's right. And then they ascend again. And at each level of ascension, they become more strategic and less tactical, and they have less output to show. They become dependent on the output of others to demonstrate their value. And so their whole value proposition to the organization is no longer about what they do, it's what they can get other people to do. And now we've said, and that whole thing you did where you got people to do things, we're letting them do it themselves.
The one mechanism that you had.
Yes. So it's a legitimate problem. It's terrible. And how do you pull them into the game? I mean, I've been in organizations where the managers actually just went and rejoined teams, where they became doers again. That was in one organization, and they were just like, you know what, but they had a recognition. If I find value in producing something, then I need to be producing something to show value. It's not like I'm. We've tried to engage people at another level where we say, well, fine, make it possible for those teams to produce better within this new way of working. And that is your new role, right? You're still getting benefit, or you're still providing benefit to the organization by enabling teams to be productive. But it's not you individually driving individuals anymore. It's you as a management collective driving collectives of teams.
Yeah.
Of individuals.
Yeah, but you can't really expect a middle manager to do that in the absence of support and understanding from their boss and the right incentives from HR and all of that stuff. So it kind of goes back to either this comes down from the CEO and the middle manager is being told, they're being given the context for the change, the reason for it, specifics on what the old job was and what the new job is, and that this is your new job, and these are the new expectations, and these are the new performance characteristics will look like in your review, right? It's a very deliberate, thing. It has to, and it doesn't always happen. We'll say, so
rarely happens.
What do you expect people to do? I mean, you can't expect somebody to act in contrast to what their boss expects or what HR will evaluate them on.
Right. And how do you expect someone to act differently if you've given them no guidance into how to be different?
100%.
Maybe should
Which
there
is
be
why
a
we
new
can't
role?
stay in a box.
Should there be a new role called impediment ameliorator?
That's not a word. It is a word. I wouldn't use it in the titles to be maybe, absolutely. In a large organization, I think that might be...
My job is, as an impediment ameliorator, is to ensure that all the impediments that have boiled up that are structural in nature, we get them ameliorated.
I'm a CIA.
Exactly. You went exactly where I was going. A chief, and the ultimate one is I want to be a CIA chief ameliorator.
Okay.
I might get on board
Implementing
as long
unit
as you can call him a release train engineer.
But that's actually even above that.
Yeah, it would be.
Well, yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
They're a release organization engineer. No. Anyway, organization train engineer. There are probably people who have thought through titles for the extra levels that.
No doubt. There are titles waiting. So I feel like this lull in the conversation might
Is
indicate
It's a signal that we have reached the end.
of what?
Have we beat the horse?
Yes, he's dead.
Okay.
Has this been this agile thing?
This has.
I've been Matt Beam.
I've been Mike Marchi.
And I was Jeff Singleton.
Fantastic. See you next time, everybody. Thanks for joining.
Adios.
Bye. Let me hit stop here.